Hello, my Juicy co-creators. Lilu here on the Juicy Living Tour. And today I'm in New York City with Paul. Hello, Paul.
Hello. Nice to meet you, Lilu.
Same here. I'm so excited to be in your presence. I've just been introduced to your work through Alan Steinfeld that has the New Realities TV show here in New York. And it just feels really right. I love those synchronicities on the flow that brought us together sitting here in the middle of Manhattan. You have one of these extraordinary stories. In 1987, you had a spiritual experience that changed the course of your life. You've been channeling, you do a lot of energy transmission work, and I just want to learn about this new universe that opened up, especially in 1989, right, at harmonic convergence. So what happened on that day? Where were you at before, and what has opened up?
I mean, I don't know if it's as dramatic as it sounds. You know, for me it was dramatic, but I still don't really know what happened. It was 1987. I was about less than a year out of graduate school. I'd been at Yale. I was raised something of an atheist. I say an atheist. My mom says we were agnostic, but I began to look on my own. I had a list of things I had to have achieved, you know, by the time I was 25, and I got the list and I wasn't happy at all. So I began to look and I began to make some changes. And people told me that there was this thing happening called a harmonic convergence and people were going to wake up. And I don't know if I knew what that meant, but I knew I wanted to be woken up. And I went up to my roof that night and I asked to be woken up. And I had a crystal in my hand, somebody giving me a mantra. I think I thought you needed those things, you know, I think you needed the props. But I went very earnestly and something actually happened. And, you know, I don't know what it was. I mean, people said it sounded to them like it might have been a Kundalini awakening, a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. Somebody said a couple of years ago it sounded like something called a soul awakening. But it was an experience of energy that began sort of moving from the pit of my being up and up and up and up and out through the top of my head and sort of left me frozen and sort of swaying in the energy on the roof. And, you know, when I look back on it, I wonder sometimes if I induced it through breath work. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 25 years old and searching. Anyway, I started seeing lights around people after that, just these little things like fireflies, and that was enough, you know, to keep me going. And people said, you know, well, maybe it's a detached retina, maybe you have a tumor, you know, and I knew it wasn't that. And I ended up going to see energy healers myself to get a context of what was beginning to happen to me. And then I studied healing, and I found out that when I had my hands on people, I began to hear things for them clairaudiently, and I began to operate as an empath without even knowing what one was. So, you know, if I was sitting like this with you and suddenly my right shoulder started to hurt, I learned very quickly it was probably your shoulder. And I began to take on the symptoms of people as they arrived, you know, for their sessions. You know, before they'd walk in the door, I would be feeling, you know, what they were feeling. And then the hearing got better, and I began to do groups. And so there was a real process, but I was, you know, I've had a life in academia. You know, I teach college, I run a graduate program, and I was doing this stuff fairly quietly for a number of years and sort of preferred it that way. And then about 3 years ago, I was doing a group, and my guides said to somebody in the group that I wouldn't really believe what was coming through me until I saw it written down. And so the next week I recorded and I transcribed the session, and it was a 5-page lecture that didn't require any editing on, you know, the evolution of consciousness. And I guess these things have been coming for a period of time. And then about maybe a month later, they dictated a whole book, you know, over the course of 2 weeks. You know,
this one, I Am the Word.
It's called I Am the Word, yeah. And they dictated over 2 weeks. So that's what's been happening.
Oh, this is really, really exciting. You never at any point actually, you were not afraid of this experience? And
the one on the roof was very personal to me. I mean, I use it as a marker. I don't say that I was singled out for some amazing experience, but sort of coming from the background that I came from, I think I needed something somewhat tangible in order to make it real for me. And really, I needed to either see it, feel it, hear it, or something. And the funny thing is now I'm able to see it, feel it, and hear it. I mean, I work that way. And when I do groups, the energy tends to be very tangible. So my guides come through with energy that can really be experienced. And they attune people and they open them up to this frequency that they're working, which they call the Word, which is, they say, is the energy of God in action. So it was dramatic in that it supported my going on a bit of a journey that I might not have gone into quite so willingly without it. But when you have something like that happen to you that you sort of can't refute, and then your whole life is going to get turned inside out afterwards, which is pretty much what happened for a period of time. I sort of left the path that I thought I was supposed to be on in many ways, and I went on my own search. So it was very important that way.
It's beautiful how it keeps on opening up further and further and deeper. Is the message consistent, or that you find that as new communication through different senses open up, then it adds a new layer?
It's been a process for me, and I'm actually very grateful for that. I mean, I have friends. I mean, I had psychic experiences as a child, but I didn't put a lot of stock in them. And even though I have a practice, I'm not generally that comfortable calling myself a psychic, even though that's work that I do. I mean, as an intuitive. It's been a process of building. So initially, I didn't know that I could do any of these things until suddenly I was doing them. Until suddenly, I was doing a reading for somebody, and my skin started to burn from the inside, and I was on the phone with somebody. I didn't know what was happening, and the woman said, well, I'm having a hot flash, I'm in menopause. And so I began to have everybody else's experiences in my body. And now I just have to sort of step into other people. That's one of the things I do a lot. So if you want to know what's going on with your sister, I can sort of step into your sister, and I sort of, will assume her expressions and personalities and often tell you what I feel, not necessarily medically, but emotionally. And there have been sort of levels of development of all this, and the channeling has been radically transformed since I first started, and a lot of that has been about learning to trust it.
So what is the core, or what is the vision or the mission of the word?
Wow, that's a big question. It's probably easier for me to try to get it directly, and I don't know if I will right now.
Okay, good.
Really, it's to become manifested as your own divine self. I mean, that's what they talk about. They say that we are an aspect of the Creator, and that we can be realized as such in form, in material form. So, I Am the Word in many ways is a treatise on how to ascend in frequency to that level of consciousness in a way that's tangible. And what I like about the work is that it's tangible. I mean, they say that the book is an energetic transmission that works directly on the reader. And I've gotten a lot of mail from people that have been reading the book, and they write me and they say, I'm reading the book and I'm vibrating, and I'm reading the book and I feel my crown chakra opening, and that's what they say happens. So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but the work of my guide seems to be to remind us who we truly are, and to bring us into that awareness in a way that is tangible, can be experienced in daily life. So they do it through an attunement to the frequency that they call the word. The book is an attunement itself. You don't need me to do it. I mean, it's for everybody, to do this. But what they pretty much say is, we've forgotten who we are, and this is who we are. And it used to take a long, long time to sort of lift our vibration to that level. But what's happening on the planet right now, which really is, according to the information that I've been getting, really a quickening and a level of ascension that's sort of, building. It makes it very possible for us now to wake up, to our own divine nature and be expressed as that. And I think that's the difference. It's not about ideas anymore. It's about being.
Yeah. So would you say that there's more and more channels that pop up now as a way to transmit this energy? Is that more and more channels?
I don't know. I mean, my guides have said that the energy that they're bringing through, or the information that they're bringing through, is coming through other channels around the world in language that's appropriate to different cultures. I mean, the language that my guides work with, seems somewhat rooted in the Judeo-Christian tradition. I mean, they talk about the Christ as a consciousness. They talk about, the Christ being that aspect of the self, which is, God within us that can be realized in form. And I'm sure that message, is coming through in other ways, without that kind of language, but that's the language that I've been given. Years ago when I was doing this work, I used to try to, temper the language or soften it so it would be a little more user-friendly, and then I finally realized that was my getting in the way, and if this is what they wanted to come through with, that's what I would say. I mean, I Am the Word, the book, is really an unedited transcript of, 2 weeks worth of channeling sessions. I mean, the book came out in order, as a verbal dictation that was later typed, and the only things that were edited were, when, somebody interrupted interrupted the session, or, something like that. And, or the woman who was on the receiving end of the dictation, asked a personal question because she had full access to my guides. So occasionally she'd want to know about her own life. And, if they said, do you have any questions? I think meeting about the book or the text that they just delivered, she would say, well, what about this for me? So we let those out. But other than that, that's what the whole book is doing.
Extraordinary. So how does that go through? Because I've seen a small video of you, and it's literally your body just moves and not shakes, but there's a different voice, there is a different sound, and then you tell us about that process.
Well, I'm not a trance channel. I'm present. I'm reseated, but I'm present through the channeling. I'm a little bit odd in that as the words come, I whisper them as they come, and I usually whisper them softly, and it's like come, and then I repeat them in a louder voice so that people can hear. So now that I've begun doing larger groups, and occasionally on mic, people will often hear me on the first time, but I hear a fragment at a time. The rocking, it depends. I mean, sometimes I'm almost dovening. I'm just sort of rocking back and forth as the information comes, but that seems to settle and calm down as the energy of the group that I'm with sort of lifts and reaches a level of congruence, and then it's a nice flow. But the process is, I used to feel it when it first started years and years ago. I used to almost feel like somebody was pressing their lips against my forehead and sort of impressing the words into me. And now it's not that feeling, but the energy is familiar, the cadence is familiar, and I know who's coming through. Just like if I were to tune into somebody you asked me about, I would know that that's not my guides. If you want to know how's my brother doing, and I tune into your brother, and I'm hearing a different texture and a different kind of language, I'm going to know that that's not, what's dictating the text. So my way of channeling, it's not the most graceful way. I always say that people who watch me, it's not that graceful, but it's how it comes.
And when that comes through, there is a lot of messages for the evolution of the planet and where we're at right now. Could you be in a transmission phase right now and share that evolutionary?
I'll see if I can go there.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yes, and they're saying yes. Why not? We're here so we can talk. The shift that you're taking, and the shift that you're taking is a shift in consciousness about self-knowing as the divine self that you truly are, as you awaken to your nature. As you awaken to your nature, you call to you those things. You call to you those things that are in congruence with that aspect of the self, that knows who she is, I know who I am. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know what I am. I know how I serve. I know how I serve is how we teach you now. And direct you to your knowing, and direct you to your knowing as you know yourself as I am word. As you know yourself as I am word, you accelerate your frequency. And you lift in consciousness. And you lift in consciousness to an awareness of the light that you are. This is a mass event. This is available to everyone. This is available to everyone as they claim it. It must be claimed. We cannot make you change. But we can show you who you are. But we can show you who you are and demonstrate it for you. In our own being, so you may hear. And as you hear, you may recognize yourself. You may recognize yourself as the one who can know. When you know, you are. You don't have to act anymore. You are, and you are being in yourself. And you are being in yourself as expressed in frequency, period. And they're saying period. So I don't know if that made any sense or that answered the question, but that's sort of where they go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that I've never experienced anything like that, and it probably requires a second listening to really get everything that they were saying, but they're saying it's all in the being.
Well, I get it's how we are. I mean, I can't really translate what comes. Whenever I try to say it, I don't say it well, and it's very clunky. Who you are is who you say you are. They're saying who you are is who you say you are, and that is our message, when you claim your aspect. When you claim you're an aspect of the divine, you know this to be true. And you know this to be true as expressed through your frequency. Through your frequency, you are manifested as such. It can be no other way to claim I am word. To claim I am word is to stake your claim, is to stake your claim in manifestation. In manifestation as the aspect of the Christ, as the aspect of the Christ that can be realized in form, that can be realized in form. This is why you came here. This is why you came here, to know who you are, to know who you are. If you wish it, it is here. If you wish it, it is here. It is here. It is here. They're saying it is here, period. And they're saying period.
Is love all that is?
Yeah, well, that's a yes. I mean, that's a yes from them. I mean, that's the teaching that they've, the first level of the teaching, and I am the word, really was about manifesting at this level of consciousness. And I can't say that I'm there. I mean, I'm a student of the work, and often a reluctant one, I think, in some ways. In the old days, I thought my job was to sort of set the chairs up for the groups and then order the pizza afterwards. But, now I'm sort of having to do the work more because it's so present in my life. And about 3/4 of the way through the third group, they started to talk about incarnating as love, and that being love, or incarnating as the frequency of love, is really where they're going, with the work. And they've since dictated a second book, which they call, the Book of Love and Creation, which I haven't turned in yet. It's been sitting there waiting to be proof for a while, which is all about being love. And they say that love is a frequency. Love is a frequency. It's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. It's none of the things we think it is, but it can be incarnated as. You can move into that frequency and be it, and be responding from that. But, one of the things they say a lot in the work, which I appreciate and I'm able to hold, is that you can't do this. You can't be the light without seeing everybody else as the same thing. They say you can't be the light and hold your brother in darkness. It's just not possible. And that's not easy sometimes. I mean, but that's the work. That's the work of the time, I think. And a lot of what I think they're teaching is about moving beyond separation. And what we think we are is much smaller than I think, in fact, we truly are. And that's the message that I've been hearing from them.
Yes, but it's hard to love somebody else if we don't love ourselves. So it goes both ways.
It really does. I mean, they said to somebody a couple of weeks ago, that, well, they say it in the book, that none of the, the book can really work to the extent that we said, if you can just allow for a moment in time that you're loved, you can do the work. But you just have to allow that. And somebody asked me in an interview, what would change everything? How fast could things change? And the guide said, if everybody knew that they were loved just for a moment, everything would change. But we don't. We don't. So that's part of the process.
What is their guidance as to how we can best open up to this love?
To be. They're saying to be, and to forget what you were told, and to forget what you were told. What you were told was wrong. What you were told was wrong. Who you think you are. Who you think you are is not who you are. Is not who you are. Who you say you are. Who you say you are is what you create from. Is what you create from. As you decide your truth. As you decide your truth, respond to that level of enlightenment. They're saying enlightenment, correct, and that was what you create from. And that will be what you create from. To be loved, we say. To be loved, we say, is to be in the frequency of love, is to be in the frequency of love, and to allow love to be you, and to allow love to be you. It is a process. It is a process of acclimating to frequency, and becoming willing to release the fear of being seen for who you are, That is the fear, That is the fear, that you will be seen for who you are, that you will be seen for who you are. It will not be good enough, and it will not be good enough, or loved, or held in esteem. What is this? All of you fear that you will be seen as something wrong, and that is not the case anymore. And that is not the case anymore. If you allow yourself to move beyond that, you may. They say you may. That's what I hear.
Magnificent. Because we are. We are magnificent beings in the creation.
That's what they say. I mean, that's what they say. I mean, I can't say that I'm there yet. I know it comes through me. It seems to come through at times with significant energy, that is very transformative for people. And I trust it only in that I see the effects of it on my own life and on the life of those who encounter it. The hardest part that I have about my work, frankly, is that it comes through me. And I see myself as just this guy, and this sort of flawed guy who's a bit reluctant in some ways. And I've become visible with this work really only in the last year because, the book is there and I want to be able to support it. I had a nice life, as a college teacher, and I had a nice life running a grad program, and I maintain those things as well. And the fact that, I'm now sort of allowing for this to be seen and to be held is a new experience for me still. But I got to say, if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't do it. Why? I mean, there's no need. But I do feel, and my guides say this, and they're very direct about this, that we're really at a time of reckoning. I mean, that's where we stand now. We really stand at a reckoning. And they say, we're being faced with all of our creations. Everything that we've created, we're getting to look at and really, I think, redecide. And I think it's how we operate now, how we choose to be, as it were, is what really will sort of, dictate the course of our future. And I think that's hopeful. I do think that that's a hopeful message.
When you're when you have the psychic medium hat, are you still in their presence, or that's a separate kind of work?
It's really interesting to me because they go back and forth. I mean, when I'm channeling and I'm doing a class or they're teaching, because they say that they're teachers. The only psychic work that they'll do is if they pull people up and they'll say, okay, and then I'll tune into them physically or I'll start to hear messages for them. And that's more psychic work, but the commentary from the guides is still channeled work. So when I'm working with a client, I work two ways. I mean, very often somebody will sit down and the guides will just say, this is what's going on with you, and yada, 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 yada. And what they really want to hear about is their marriage, or their boss or something like that. I mean, I have the ability, and I'm grateful for it because it's verifiable to the clients and to people that I work with. If some guy says, I need to know what's going on with my wife, and I work with the whole name, and if I step into the wife's energy field and I start to resemble her and tell him, and he says, yeah, that's her, and then I can sort of hear what's going on and I can feel the dynamic. The guides will come in, though, and sort of describe what things mean. You know what I mean? Because it can still be, we're still interpreting things at a personality level. Yeah. And so that can be a low way of operating. But so somebody can come to me and say, am I ever going to find a lover? And the guides, psychically I can sort of go into some of that, but the guides really care about why you're blocking your own ability to be in a relationship. And that's maybe what they address, or they may go to the time, and they're pretty effective with that. They'll say, ask her what happened when she was 12. And they'll go to 12 and they'll describe something, or the person will know exactly what it was. And then they'll begin to work energetically to clear, some of that stuff that's been held that's creating blockage. But they say, and I'm getting this message more and more and more from them, that we're in choice. We choose, we choose, we choose. I'm choosing to sit here with you. You're choosing to sit here with me. We're always in choice, and that we deny that. We think we're smaller than we are. We think we're supposed to do all these things that we've either been trained to do or we've acclimated to out of habit, and we're operating unconsciously. And as we realize that we're in choice, even those things that we say aren't working, and my guides say, if you have stuff that's not working in your life, probably you're getting some kind of a payback from that because you're holding on to it. You're still perpetuating it. There's usually a dividend in being angry with somebody or feeling disappointed or whatever we sort of continually play out. So the psychic work can come in handy in terms of identification. And it's fun. I love getting the verification, from people who said, you were right. I married the guy, who said, who wore the chinos and the funny glasses and smoked the pipe. I like hearing those things. Or you're right about my boss. She did leave 2 months later. But that's the easy stuff. The real stuff that I think is actually of much more importance is why we choose what we choose. And why we sort of still operate in this mode that I think is somewhat limited, because we believe that we're not allowed to sort of move out of the frame that we've either inherited or created. And my guides are kind of blowing the frame out. We're remarkable beings. We don't know that, and a lot of their teaching is about knowing. I mean, I am in my knowing is one of the things that they talk about a lot. To be in one's knowing, it sort of means you're bypassing thinking and you move into truth. And when you're operating from your truth and you're not operating out of fear. And I found that to be true. And they often say things like, every time you've truly known something in your life, you've not been frightened. You're not frightened, you just know. The fear is all about the thinking and the anticipation. Yeah. So there's a difference.
And when you work with people, is that more, or do you work on a soul level also, or do you find that some of those blockages on our soul contracts have been made before, or is everything related really to this lifetime, particular events that happen in this physical human experience?
It's an interesting question. Occasionally they'll talk about things that have been created prior to incarnation. They'll talk about that, but not most of the time. And I think part of the reason for that is that sometimes we or I can get very invested in story. And the story is interesting and it's dramatic. And I know people that do that work that I think are really wonderful and very effective and can be very helpful. So my guides don't go hunting. They'll talk about the issue. They'll deal with the issue energetically, perhaps. They may describe something as being karmic, but all that really is, I think, is about a balancing, that if I understand it correctly. But soul contracts isn't necessarily, it's not a term that they've used with me. Other people use it. Soulmates is something that they don't use. People say, "Where's my soulmate?" And they'll respond to the question, but they'll use their own language. And I think sometimes we acclimate to a kind of speak, that's effective. And I think we do make these deals, I will not be successful because if I do so, I will disappoint somebody, or people will be angry at me, or whatever. They'll go right to those things and support people in shifting them. And they'll often identify them for people or support people in being able to claim it for themselves. But usually through example. And I gotta say, if people are acting on it in this life, they can usually find a time in this life to go back and begin to explode it from. Because if it's ephemeral, if it's not something, I used to get clients and they'd come to me and they'd say, "Well, what does Annie think about all this?" And I'd say, "Who's Annie?" He said, "My spirit guide." I say, "Yeah." He said, "Well, somebody told me 3 years ago I had a spirit guide named Annie." And I go, "I'm not getting that. It's not that you don't have it, but I'm not that interested in programming somebody else to say you were such and such and this happened to you. I'm much more interested in letting people find out, through the conversation with the guides, what they can do about what their experience is today."
Where would you say they are located?
Oh gosh,
or which timeline? Or is there
it's funny. I used to get caught up in names when all this first started. It was very important. And now I almost kind of don't want to know. They call themselves the Word most of the time. We are the Word. They say that they're a collective. They're teachers. They come from the Christ consciousness. I've heard the term ascended masters, used. And I'm comfortable with all that. The reason I sort of stay away from the names and the dimensions and all of that stuff is that I think it becomes very easy then to overlay that stuff with meaning that is very much about three-dimensional experience. So the Michael people are over there and the Gabriel people are over there and the Pleiadians are over there, and it becomes something else. And I think the information itself, frankly, is what matters. And the level of frequency. So I'm not knocking any of the other stuff at all. I'm just saying that's not how it comes through me anymore. And maybe I don't ask those questions because maybe I don't want to know,
Fair enough. The 2012, what's your insight about that through them?
Well, they don't talk about the date. They have agreed to a certain extent that I Am the Word is a 2012 book, only in that they do say that there is a paradigm shift happening, that there's a shift in consciousness, and we have a choice to make, and that we're in a time of radical change. And one of the things they've been saying a lot in my groups is really how we move through this change is a lot about not going into fear. And not buying into fear and sort of being in your truth. And they keep saying, I know who I am, I know what I am, I know how I serve is one of the things they're teaching again and again and again. And what they're doing is they're reminding us who we are, on a deeper level and grounding in that. So that we're a lot less vulnerable, I think, to misinformation, to being told who we are in ways that are limiting. So my sense of 2012, based on what I've gotten, is that there is a paradigm shift that's happening, but that it's really about an awakening, and it's about a shift in consciousness. And I think how that manifests for different people may be very different, depending on what frame they're holding, for their experience.
And it's really happening now.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, yes, that's a yes. That was from them. I just asked. I got yes. So that's a yes. Absolutely. And it will continue as mankind accelerates frequency. They're saying as mankind accelerates frequency. It has to happen. Everything returns to the source. Everything returns to the source. Everything must return. Everything must return. How you get there is up to you. How you get there is up to you as you claim your power. As you claim your power, I know I am. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know what I am. I know how I serve. I know how I serve. You can be expressed as frequency. You can be expressed as frequency in a higher way. In a higher way, and your experience is transformed. And your experience is transformed, but that is your choice. But that is your choice as you choose. As you choose, you create. You create as you create. As you create, you are experienced by others. You are experienced by others in congruence. In congruence with what you have manifested. With what you have manifested. If you dislike what you have manifested. If you dislike what you have manifested, change it. Change it. You have the ability. You have the ability to transform. To transform. The entire planet has to transform. The entire planet has to transform, and it will. And it will, as it can. As it can in the ways available to it. In the ways available to it. Period. And they're saying period.
Well, thank you, and thank you to them.
You're welcome, and you're welcome.
Thank you very much for this beautiful moment, and if you guys want to hear and read more about it, I Am the Word. And the next book?
And the next book, we'll see when it comes out, but it's called The Book of Love and Creation, and I Am the Word is out now, and it's findable.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Bye, my beautiful co-creators. Much love.